This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey, the show that dives into the science of higher consciousness with inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. Join Todd, Jackie, and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. It's all right here with stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Now, here's your hosts, Todd and Jackie.
Hey, it's another groovy day. Most of you know why that is, but I'm going to tell you anyway. That's because when I get up in the morning, before my feet hit the ground, I decide it's going to be groovy, and guess what? Turns out to be a groovy day. Something might happen, something might change. I can always just think back to when I started and turn that around, and it works 99.9% of the time. Try it. You'll like it. Like Mikey liked Life Cereal. You will dig having a groovy day. I guarantee you. I want to remind our listeners that we have a YouTube channel, and all of our shows are on YouTube. So go check it out after this show. Go see if there's something else of interest. I guarantee you, Jackie and I have a subject that you will get in the groove with. How's that? As always, I have my co-host with me today writing. Oh, I said I wasn't going to say that anymore, riding shotgun, because Jackie doesn't know what shotgun is. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Shotgun.
It's the passenger seat. You're right, the passenger seat. Right. You're the navigator.
I am indeed. Turn right, turn left. Don't go there.
He's never told me that. Hi, Jackie. How are things at the Speak, Feed, Lead project?
Always going. You know, we've got 3 classes that start with kids this week. Actually, tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday we've got classes going on, and we're getting most of our students ready for 2 summits. We've got 2 summits in the same week. Monday the 24th. And then Wednesday, the 26th, our students are speaking on different summits, getting out there in global stages, and they're having a ball. It's so fun to listen to their messages. And when I help them prepare what they want to say, it's wonderful to see these light bulbs go off, the aha moments when they realize, oh my gosh, that is something really important to me. I never thought of that before. And
these kids are preteen and in their teens, right?
Yep.
And they're speaking they're delivering 30-minute speeches.
They are. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible.
I can't even imagine being a teen or a preteen and being that focused and that interested in a subject where I could get up in front of an audience and tell them all about it from my heart.
Yeah. Well, you know, they're given 30-minute time slots. And so in many cases, especially if you're 10 or 11 years old, they'll speak for 10 minutes, and then we'll go into maybe a Q&A session. So they get to elaborate on what they've said, but it's not necessarily a full 30-minute speech. So I wanted to clarify that a little bit.
Yeah.
But they still enjoy it, and they're starting to get a following. Like many people who've attended one summit and saw them, they'll see them on another summit and like, oh, they'll message the organizer, I just love him or her. I want to see him again, you know, that kind of thing. So they're starting to get a little bit of.
So I guess the point is that if you know of or have a miniature human and you think they would do well, look up Jackie. Just Google Jackie Bailey, speakfeedlead.org, or follow the links at the lifemasteryradio.com or .net website. You'll find her, connect with her, and find out how your little human can develop these skills. You know, these skills, the ROI, the return on investment, will last them a lifetime. And I know for sure that one of Jackie's students will eventually be the president of the United States. I truly believe that in my heart, because I think that that's true. You watch these young people and they are developing skills that are going to take them places.
Well, what would be really cool is if while they're running, they say attended the Speak Feed Lead Project courses for a very young age, and everybody would know what they're talking about. That would be really cool.
Check it out. Google Jackie or find her and see if your little human can benefit from her programs, because she's got some cool stuff cooking. I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net, and you can find any links that we talk about. There's a link for our guest today and a show page for our guest today, and you can check them out, or him out, or they, or her, or whichever one, because we have a new guest every week, and you can follow along. They most of them have books, and you can follow the links and read all about it, but we're going to talk about it. While you're on that website, though, we would like you to sign up for our newsletter. Jackie produces a newsletter once a week. It highlights who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and a blog post about the show that we just did. And she always gleans great insight from our guests and puts it out there, and it is really cool. We then also take that information and put it up on our YouTube channel. We have lots. How many? Well, I'm gonna have to count it, Jackie. We must have over 300 shows.
Gotta be. Yeah,
Gotta
I think it's gotta be more than that.
We're coming on 3 years.
Yeah, but even before that, I mean, there's an archive of shows that that were happening before we even went on to Facebook or YouTube, right?
Oh, you'd think we'd be more famous than we are.
Back in those old days when we were just audio.
Here's a big call to action. Tell a friend about us. We have a blast. We have some really cool guests with topics that are on the cutting edge of their own becoming and will help you become who you are supposed to be. And we're going to talk about that with our guests today. So check it out. Jackie's book is on that website too. So is my book, 6 Keys to Life Mastery. Gosh, we just have everything for everybody to, it's a great toolbox for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. So they're all there. And Jackie and I are here to bring you the message and plant some seeds, right, Jackie? We're planting seeds.
We are planting seeds, little gardeners.
Okay, on with the show. I've rambled enough, I think. And I think that today's guest is Jackie's invite. So that means she has the introduction. Take it away, Jackie. Thank
you. Jeremy is a recent acquaintance of mine, and so grateful that acquaintance was made. He is Jeremy McDonald, and he's a spiritual healer, a teacher, a Reiki master, EFT practitioner, a Theta healing practitioner, and a life coach. Lots of things going on. And he is also known as the Storytelling Alchemist. Sounds interesting, right? Jeremy has designed and delivered many workshops to assist individuals, helping them find peace and joy in their lives. Looking from an inside soul perspective, they are able to overcome fears, alchemizing those fears into love. With Jeremy's extensive experience spanning over 25 years, his clients find balance, peace, joy, and true sublime self. He also has a book. His book is called Peace, Be Still, A Path to Self-Awareness, Love, Abundance, and Harmony, and it's in its 2nd edition, now available on Amazon. Welcome, Jeremy McDonald. It's delightful to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Jackie and Todd, for having me on the show. It's very much an honor. And I just wanted to say, Todd, you had mentioned about, not being more famous, but a real quick funny story. I was teaching a class probably 7 years ago, and somebody came in, had Google searched me and said, Jeremy, you're famous. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I agree with that, but also fame doesn't pay for the bills.
Yeah.
Popularity doesn't bring a check in every month.
That is true. I can remember back when I first started Life Mastery Radio. Before that, I was on another talk show called Holistic Living. And we invited a guest. Many of you will know her. Her name is Pam Grout.
Mhm.
And Pam has written some amazing books. Jackie and I have interviewed her more than a couple times. She's got some great books. But anyway, I went to a book signing in Seattle for Pam after we did an interview. And, so here I am in the audience. There was probably, I don't know, 75 people in that room. And she's standing up on stage and she looks and she points, she says, look, there's Todd from Life Mastery Radio. And I was like, my head just, whoa. I'm like, that's pretty cool being recognized like that. I thought that was the king ding, man. That was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Well, welcome to the show, Jeremy. You have quite a story. You have many accomplishments. This book is the second edition. Did you always know you had a book in you?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, it's interesting because of what Jackie does. If I would have found her when I was a kid, I'd have probably been in a different place. But
That's a good plug.
It's a good plug. But it was about 22, to be honest with you. I was very shy up until that point. I wouldn't necessarily approach people unless I really knew you, and very, I guess all the stuff we have when we're younger, right? And so one of my managers came up to me and said, would you like to start training a class? And I was like, the thought of standing up in front of people scared me, but I have this one little thing in me that if I'm afraid of something, I'm probably going to do it. Unless it's like, standing in front of a Mack truck, I'm not going to do that. That's just crazy. That's not fear. That's being smart. So, but I just have this thing where if I want to do something and I'm nervous about it, or if somebody says, I don't know, that's going to be really hard, I'm like, well, I'll figure it out. And so I got in there, and I remember shaking the first time I got up there and how terrified I was. And there was about 15 people in the room, and they videotaped me. I'm going to date myself. And then they handed me a VHS tape to go watch later. So one of those ancient artifacts in life. And so, incidentally, that took me on this journey of self-discovery, of growing and studying, because I wanted to get better at that. Teaching and learning new subjects about leadership and self-awareness. And then I ran across the subject of emotional intelligence probably in like 2002 or 2003, so 20 years ago. And I just started researching that and looking at it. And then I had my own spiritual growth, learning how to meditate and all that stuff. So 2006, my entire world fell apart. I say that's the beginning of the recession of 2008. And so then going through that, that's where the book kind of came into place, because I realized that when I was looking at myself in the mirror, I wanted to start sharing with people my journey, because I felt like it would help other people. And so I use a lot of stories in there, because I feel like I can, if I'm telling my story, that it'll relate to somebody, and they'll be able to take that, as opposed to me being the person that's acting like the guru. I don't really feel like a guru. It's one of those things, and incidentally, the word guru just means one that's transfigured themselves from darkness into light. They've gone through their dark night of the soul, so to speak, and they found peace in it. And so that's where the book came from. I'm working on my second book, and it's going to be exactly the same way. The last 10 years, while I was writing that book, my mother transitioned onto the other side. And so it's from this next book is the last 10 years coming into that. So and Peace Be Still was the first part of that.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I were cut from the same rug. Can you think back though? Did you have an interest in metaphysics early on, or for me, once I discovered metaphysics and the definition of it, I couldn't get enough, man. I was just hungry, and it was good thing they didn't have Google, because I probably would have been glued to it.
Well, the answer is no. My mother started going to a women's psychic development class in 1995. Maybe it was 94 or something like that. And I was 20, 21 years old, something like that. And I thought she was crazy. I was like, what are you doing, Mom? This doesn't even make sense. And so probably 97 or 98, she asked me I had a headache that day, and she said, will you go to this healing circle? And I was like, I don't know, Mom, that's just weird. And she said, please just go. I'll tell you what, I'll buy you dinner. So she coerced me in with my stomach, and we went. They laid their hands on me, and within about a minute, my headache was gone. And so it just started opening me up. And then I had a friend that invited me to other thing. It just kind of led me down a journey. And so then she and I started attending a spiritual development class together. And my mother was always my best friend. You know, she was a young mother, you know, basically, you know, there's not big age gap between us. It's about 16 years. And so we went on, she went more of, I went more of the self-awareness, psychic, that mediumship type thing. My mother went more down the Eastern medicine. She was a nurse, you know, Reiki, any type of energy healing and that kind of stuff. She went down that route. But then she taught that to me. And so I always jokingly say that, you know, sons don't listen to their mother necessarily until they're not around or until they get older and realize that they're smarter than they give them credit for. Well, that's exactly what I did. You know, I remembered all the things that she had taught me. And so to answer your question, no, I mean, but when metaphysics did come in, it's been life-changing. It's been one of those things where I got a lot of explanations for things that I was angry about and hurt and why things work the way they do. And you know, and that journey, it keeps on getting deeper and deeper. I mean, it's the Fillmores said that this spiritual journey is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And we're looking for this place of arrival, but the arrival is just understanding the growth and the potential of the opportunities of learning more about yourself and the energy around you. And so I think that's the blessing.
Yeah, how it all works. And you know, what blew me away mostly was synchronicity, right? They were way beyond what people would say coincidence. And I was like, there's just no way, man. There's no way that was a coincidence.
I've had so many of those in there. There was just one of those things. Well, you know, you just, these things that happen to just remind you, and I call them little nuggets to take you down the path and on down your journey. And, you know, one of them was my mother passing away. She did a lot of things on the other side to let me know for a fact that she was there with me. One of them was I worked for MetLife at the time, and we had her memorial outside, and then the MetLife blimp hovered over her memorial for almost an hour. And we were in an area where it shouldn't. There was no football game around us. There was nothing around us. It just literally hovered over us. And I thought in my mind, now you're just showing off. And so, but that's spirit's way of telling us that there's something. And if you're paying attention, most people would just brush that off. But there's things where it's almost like the best way to describe is the whole world just stopped. And this random thing that would have never normally happened just happened. And you have to stop and think. Like one friend of mine, his father leaves feathers everywhere, and it's always the same color, and it's always at the same time of day, and it's really random. But there's more to synchronicity than just that. There's these little things where you're just meeting somebody, and you're like, "Whoa, did that just happen?" You know, I feel like I've met you, and then there's all these signs that prove to you that this person is supposed to be there in your life, whether it's for a lesson or whatever. There's always a reason. The universe is always talking to us. Our spirit's always talking to us, whatever reference you want to use.
Yeah. Well, I know that speaking of your mom, she must have been quite young when she passed away, because she and your father were both teenagers when you were born, right?
Yeah, she passed away at 54. So,
wow. And so that led to maybe a little bit of a unsettled or turbulent childhood, right? And then you write this book that's called Peace Be Still. Was that a message in itself that you were sending to the world? What was the significance of naming your book Peace Be Still? Well,
the significance was, and if anybody that read the first chapter, you'll know that I suffer from addiction, and so it's one of those things where why did I have those addictions? It's avoidance of myself. And then when you start peeling back the layers, you realize, I was born in 1974 to a 16-year-old mother and a 15-year-old father. And so my father's family moved about a year after I was born down to Phoenix. And my mother and I stayed in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. And so there was this abandonment issue going on within me. And, you just have to kind of look at that. And I wish more adults would start looking at this stuff, because this is stuff where you can release and start looking at it. Hey, your parents, it didn't make my parents bad people. They were kids. And so my mother went on, my mother wanted to be a a backpacker around Europe, and she was an artist and a photographer, had her own dark room where she could develop her own pictures and stuff like that. She was very smart. And the creative side. And my father is very brilliant when it comes to sales and connecting with other people, but they were kids at the time. And so my mother had these dreams so that didn't necessarily get to happen. And so in 1979, she went to nursing school and became a nurse because she said, I have a responsibility here. And it's called, his name is Jeremy. And so she built a life around that. But one of the things that will happen is that you'll start to see and you start witnessing in your parents things that they do that's not necessarily healthy for themselves. My mother was always very giving and very kind to the point where she was taken advantage of. And so as a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old, you start to witness that, but don't correlate. Then you start to live like your parents did. And so then you start getting hurt, and it feeds that abandonment issue or that self-esteem issues within your life. So then you have to start saying no to that energy. You have to start saying, no, I don't have to live like that. I love my parents. They're great people, but that was their life and they did the best they could. And now my name is Jeremy and I'm going to live life the way I want to. So not every circumstance that leads to a self-esteem issue or problems going on in your life has to do with an abusive childhood. It's one of those things where it's the circumstances of how you lived. And so because I used to look at it, I was like, well, I had an okay childhood, my mother never hurt me or anything like that, but she was also a 16-year-old girl doing the best she could. And so you have to start looking at that, and you start doing forgiveness work within you, and you start looking at the relationships you picked were very similar to the ones your mother picked. And so as an adult, we get to choose our pattern, and that's the one thing that I like to give to everybody is so Peace Be Still came in to say, in order for you to look at that, you have to find a sense of peace in order to see things from a balanced point of view. And so when you start doing that, and then you start loving both the darkness in you, like Carl Jung would talk about with the shadow, or in the yin and yang, there's the dark side and the light side. It's just the balance between the two of them. You're loving both of them, but you're also not acting on these insecure feelings that make you do destructive things to your life, like going out and relapsing on drugs or something like that. For me, that would be definitely a bad pattern to go into. And so why do you start, those things pop up? And anybody that's been an addict will tell you that never goes away. But what you can do is make a choice every time. You can say, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm going to do this that's healthy for me. So me, it's like, I'll pick up my phone, I'll call one of my friends, or I'll start writing, I'll go into meditation and start working through that. You have to find out what's positive for you. So Peace Be Still was about that. And you can't have that unless you find stillness. And that stillness gets deeper and deeper. Like now I'm at a point where I can meditate for 5-6 hours and just have complete silence in my body and mind, and that's an amazing place to be. So
well, the bonus of what you just described is self-awareness, right?
Self-awareness. Yep.
Why am I, and it's an awareness, why do I react the way do I do what, and I can stop that reaction. I don't have to react that way, but before that it's just like you're a robot, right? Something happens, this is my response, and you don't have that control.
Yeah, and we're looking for reasons to blame that. Like, why am I reacting like a robot? Who did this to me? Is it, my church, my school, my parents and stuff like that? But it really comes down to, it doesn't really matter in a sense. Of course, you have to go through all the work, the forgiveness and stuff like that, but you make the choice as an adult. And so now that you're an adult, you can say, well, wait a second. Exactly what you say, self-awareness, and then you hit a level of self-actualization that Maslow would have said, where you start looking at it. Then, by the way, self-actualization doesn't always, you might not live that your entire life because something's going to happen, your safety needs or, those kind of things. Somebody passes away in your life, you're going to fall down into another way of being in that moment because your whole foundation just got shook. And so then it's another opportunity for you to be self-aware and allow yourself to grieve and work through that. And so, 10 years ago when my mother transitioned, I started, because I knew in my beliefs that, where she was at, I didn't necessarily feel, well, why am I feeling pain? I know where she's at. But then in the last 10 years, have I broken down and cried? Of course. When I thought I had deleted her number out of my phone and wanted to tell her, I was looking up somebody else's number and it popped up mom. it hits you. So part of self-awareness is to allow yourself to experience emotions and not be afraid of them. There's I think 283 emotional peptides in the body. They're there for a reason. Those chemicals are there for you to actually experience through those. So sustained depression, sustained sorrow, sustained grief is basically saying in your body, hey, there's something we need to do here, and you're heading down a path that's not going to be conducive for your emotional wellness. And so, and you start looking at that and becoming self-aware and regulating those things. So
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you have this sort of, oh yeah, watch me kind of personality. Is that something that you drew on when it came to overcoming the addiction and other challenges that you've had?
Yeah, and that was more of my own thing, because I was out experiencing those symptoms and saying I'm going to write a book, and people are like, I remember I went to this thing, and this lady said to me, and she was like a stress test, and my stress was off the charts, and she goes, I don't know if I would come to you if you wrote a book, because I don't know if I would believe anything you said. And I was like, so, and it was an awakening, and I said, oh, well, I'm definitely writing that book. And it came out like 4 years after that. But there was one of those things, you have to go through the process. And I think that in order to write those books and in order to teach anything that has to do with mindset mastery or any of those type of things, you have to have a level of understanding, like Todd mentioned, self-awareness, because you're going to continue to, and I don't care what the spiritual subject is, law of attraction, people like to talk about that a lot. Well, that you need to understand why you're attracting and creating the world around you so that you're experiencing. And so I think Wayne Dyer said it best, that we attract what we are, not what we desire. And that really throws people for the loop. They get really upset because they're like, you're telling me I created all this. I'm like, well, it's called co-creation. And there's one of those things where when you start looking at who you are, what you're doing, and then there's all these opportunities that come up. You'll have something where the pandemic really pushed our buttons. We were at home, some of our businesses weren't doing as well as we wanted them to. A lot of people lost their job, people lost relatives and loved ones. And so for me, I was constantly used to being social and being out. So here I am sitting in my house, and I had to face loneliness for the first time in a very long time. And so as a speaker and being out there as a podcaster, I don't necessarily have to face loneliness very often, but I did. So, there's a lot of things that we have to do. But.
Well, and everything like you described, for me, once I worked through the 12 steps, actually worked through the 12 steps with another human being, I couldn't wait to stand on a soapbox. I was going to tell the whole world about it, right? Because this is the solution. But the way you described it, we have to live these things. We have to go through them, because then we can't really speak to them unless we speak from our stories or our experience.
Yeah, and there's also, by the way, more than one addiction. So mine was to drugs and sex, and so just to be blunt about it. But the other people have it to too much ice cream, too much food, overeating, shopping. There's a lot of things that, and shopping and eating food isn't necessarily bad. Well, when it's what you turn to, I call it default behaviors that we go into when something triggers us. And so there's a process I use, and it's kind of cliche, but it works. And so I'm sure some of your parents and grandparents said 1 finger pointing out in judgment, 3 pointing back at you. Right. Well, what I use that is if I'm angry at somebody, if I'm hurt somebody, if I got all this stuff going on in me, and then it's time for me to stop and go, well, wait a second, what is it in this that's triggering? How is it making me really feel? And so it's not about who's right or wrong. Now I'm just looking at the emotions and the energy behind it. And so, well, they made me feel like I'm stupid, so, and then you have to ask yourself the question, well, are you stupid? And the answer is, well, no, I'm not stupid. And so, well, then why would somebody make you feel that way? You chose to feel that way. And that's what I do internally within myself. Then once I do that, I can go and talk to somebody and say, hey, you know what, this is about me and my own emotions. But I just want to let you know, when you said that, well, it made me feel this way, but I want to understand your intentions. And so what happens is that you can open up a dialogue, because they say that 90% of all disagreements has to do with a misunderstanding. 10% of it has to be with a difference in values. And so if you can really start asking those questions, and so that's your that and emotional intelligence is your social awareness, you know, and interacting with other people. And
Oh
so if
man,
you,
we need to get on a soapbox now, because there's a whole bunch of politicians that need to hear just exactly what you said.
well, you know,
I'm kidding, of course,
no,
but
I'm not. I'm not going to say.
that's
I'm not going to disagree with you, but
that's the feeling that we get, right?
yeah.
It's like it's great, but then
Well,
there's another emotion, right?
yeah, of course. And I actually told a friend of mine years ago, he was going to work for a call center. I said, you want to find enlightenment, work for a call center. And, but you could also just sign onto social media and just start scrolling through your news feed, because what are you doing? You're looking at those triggers.
Yeah.
And so people will say, I don't deal with drama. I'm like, most of the time when somebody says I don't deal with drama, I usually find that they are the one that's creating the drama.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because they're trying to avoid that. But you never escape adversity. There's always going to be something that's going to hit your button,
Exactly.
offend you, hurt your feelings, whatever. But the more and more you work on it, the more and more self-aware you are, so that you can stop and you can say to somebody, what was that all about? And then you can understand the emotions or the energy behind what fuels them. And at least you may not agree with them in the end. Except you've had a dialogue, which is what the old, Socratic dialogues were all about. They would have a dialogue with people, and then they would grow from that. And I had the very rare opportunity to take a class from Dr. Raymond Moody many years ago. And one of the things he said from a philosophy standpoint, he goes, never say that this is exactly the way it is, because when you do that, then you give up the opportunity to grow into new ideas.
Yeah.
So I generally will say there's a lot of compelling evidence to support that, but I won't necessarily say this is exactly the way, especially when it comes to theology or different ways of looking at things. I may say, I just don't see it that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
So what is
definitely.
the chapter headings in your book? One of the chapters is Our Inside World. Is this what you talk about within that chapter, or is there something else that you delve into?
Yeah, so that's about the inner voice, the inner world that's going on, all that inner dialogue. So there's an inner dialogue that's going on inside of you. And I'm going to date myself, but there used to be a show on the Fox station when it was only a weekend thing in the 80s. I don't know if you guys remember when Fox was only on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it was called What's in Herman's Head, was the name of the sitcom. But the idea was there was a bunch of voices inside of them. There was the depression, the insecurity, all that other kind of stuff, the happiness, the joy, the overexcitement. Well, that's going on inside of all of us. And that was a comedy. But I always say what's going inside of our brain is a divine comedy anyways. I mean, if we really started talking about what's going on in our brain, we'd probably be laughing all the time, which I do. I laugh hysterically at myself internally. So there's an inside world going on within inside of you. And I'm sure everybody can relate to this. They've been sitting in a Zoom meeting or in a meeting with a group of people, and you have a lot of respect for those people. And then you might start thinking, wow, what am I doing in this meeting? I don't even know if I fit in here, if I'm good enough for it. That's called imposter syndrome. And so what you can start doing is you have to start talking to that inner voice and start saying, no, that's not true. I mean, there's a reason why we're here. And there's a reason why I'm here to give my input and what from my own experience and my own wisdom. But I used to go through that because I'd be in a room with people with PhDs and MD at the end of their name. And here I am. At that time, I had an associate's degree. And so I thought they have more education than I do. They have, they're smarter than I am. And then as I started to interact with them, a lot of them became my clients. And so I thought it was very interesting because I have a lot of business background in business. So I would help them with their businesses, their practices and stuff like that. Because all of us have this experience and we judge ourselves. So that inner world of that judgment, you have to start talking to it and saying, well, no, I'm here for a reason because of my experience in business, because I've been a trainer for so many years and I've coached a lot of executives. And so, or you might stand in there and look at, some beautiful model on a magazine and say, oh, I'll never have, be as that beautiful. Well, who says that that's beautiful?
Right.
And what beautiful is on the shades of the eyes of the beholder. So it's one of those things where you have to start talking to yourself, and that's the inside world. And what happens, it's always going to be there. Some people call it the little devil on the shoulder, the angel on the shoulder, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But it's constantly, both of those are talking to you at the same time. But what I say is the negative voice, don't brush it under the rug. because people want to say, don't talk. No, 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 that's not true. No, actually say to it, listen, I love you, because it's you you're talking to. I love you. And we no longer believe that anymore. Remember what we've gone through. Look at all the things that we've done and bring your own pride in. It's not from an outside thing, because a lot of times what we do is we bring pride in from, oh, that person said they love me. Well, that's wonderful, but do you love yourself?
Right.
So changing the inner world, inside world, and changing the inner dialogue is what I do as a coach. I help people change their inner dialogue, because that's what I do. That meditation I do is I sit there and I work on my inner dialogue at all times. And so it just really, when you start doing that kind of stuff and really start flipping, I call it flipping the script, so to speak, then you'll start seeing a change in your outside world. So, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I wouldn't be able to sit on the radio show with you guys. But I've gotten really comfortable with who I am as a person.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean I have everything. No, I just had a recent video of me speaking, and I saw my belly, coming over the pants a little bit, and going, oh, Jerry, you've gained way too much weight during the pandemic. So I stopped and I said, stop, wait a second. Yes, of course, health-wise, I could lose some weight. And does that make me any less of an impactful speaker? Why was that the first thing you went to? And then you have to start saying, we love ourselves. And, now maybe it's time to start changing the health, the dynamics of health and stuff like that. So, because, when we live on Zoom, we're not necessarily active all the time. So
that's true.
But,
I'm curious what you think about the younger generation, Jeremy. I don't know if you work with young people at all, but something I noticed throughout your book is you quote scripture, which I think is really cool. It's the #1 best-selling book on the entire planet, and it's got great teaching stories in it. But it seems to me the younger generation is just running the other way, and I'm curious what you think about that, and how do you approach young people with those great thoughts and ideas that are presented in that book?
Well, first of all, you have to talk people's language. I mean, in a book, that was the experience I was having at the time. It was one of those things where I had avoided anything that had to do with Christianity for so many years. And then I started reading it after I'd done a lot of internal work on myself, and you start reading it with different eyes and different feelings. And so, but you have to talk somebody's language. And so, I found that I've trained a lot of young people. My other life was as a corporate trainer, obviously. And so I've trained a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds to do customer service jobs. And so you have to talk their language. So I've learned how to say I've understood what bougie is, and all these different terms that they use. And the reason being is because you have to relate to them. Yeah. So, but the same lessons are in there. Like the Bible scripture says, the measure of what you judge is the measure by which you are judged. So what you can say to a younger person is say, when you're judging that other person, when you're looking at them and condemning them, let me ask you a question. Would you want that to happen to you?
Right.
And so you have to kind of bring it, because you have to bring it home. And so then they stop and they say, well, no, I wouldn't want that. I said, well, that person is experiencing. And so the younger people really are big into, I want to be able to express myself. And they're very vocal about it. It's not like we weren't like that when we were younger. But you start going into saying, well, they're wanting to express in their way just like you are. And so an example of that is I had a friend that was 92 years old, and she would give me a message every single time I saw her. And I was probably in my, I guess, early 40s at the time. And she would say, you're going to come in and start wearing a new pair of shoes. And I thought, I love shoes. So I thought she was literally talking about a new pair of shoes. But from her age range, a new pair of shoes meant a new way of thinking. And you're going to walk in a new path with a new pair of shoes. So I had to ask her to explain that to me. And so what's happened is, between the generations, there's different language barriers and gaps, because we all have our own slangs and our own way of thinking. And so I remember my age range was using, when we first started, I remember when I first got a cell phone, it was 45 cents a minute. And it was a GTE Telego phone. And I had a pager where people would page me, and I'd call them back for 10 seconds. All right, I'll call you right back from a payphone. And so it was that was a different world until we started getting unlimited plans. And so, to answer your question, what the younger people are doing, they're very much idealists, and or want to change the world just like I did. I used to tell my mother, you gave me this world that's full of pollution and you guys did this to us. And so and she was like, yeah, wait until you're in your 40s.
No, I see that. I do. And that's interesting. You have that take. How open to, because you opened the door early on, and you're a self-proclaimed expert in emotional intelligence. How open to that concept are they?
I think in a sense they are open to it. I have found that most young people I work with, younger people I work with, they are trying to find themselves. I have a friend in his late 20s right now, and he's really trying to work on himself. Does he go into his moments? Of course he does. I mean, that's part of it. He will talk science and psychology and quantum physics with me for hours and hours and hours. And I have a lot of friends in their 20s that are the same, and clients that I've worked with the same way. So I think they're very open to it. But what I will tell you is that I feel like we're experiencing the kids of the 60s right now in a sense, because they're very much like, I'm tired of the way things are. I'm tired of the way churches are telling us to be. I'm tired of the way governments are telling us to be. And they're not necessarily against the idea of church or government, but they're tired of being judged. And so, and they're a lot more vocal about it than we were, and so we didn't have social media like they do, and TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of kids out there that are using TikTok just to get their message out there. And so, and they're doing a lot better financially than I am, because I look at it, I'm like, what are they doing that I'm doing? Because they're speaking from the heart. And they also started at very young. Some of these kids are starting like 14, 15, 16 years old playing video games. So
Jackie is guiding them down the path. I mean, and that could, I think about it sometimes, that can only spread because one kid will see one kid doing something, right? And they're like, oh, if he can do that, I can do that.
Yeah. If we can inspire young people to do things that, we did when we were younger, we just didn't maybe have the technology that we have. It'd be great. I mean, I went on 2 tours of the United States as a musician before I was the age of 20. So it was that was an amazing experience. Now, did I have the opportunity to have if I would have had a TikTok then? Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
I don't know if we can convince them to drink from garden hoses, though.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, no, they would be grossed out about that. Like I told a group of friends one day, there was a picture of a banana that was a little brown, but still good. They're like, oh, I would never touch that. I'm like, when would you touch it? Like when it's yellow. I'm like, but yellow is still a little, ripe. It's not. So the idea of germs and stuff like that. We also didn't grow up in this. We grew up in a different era. So
right,
it's an evolution.
Yeah. Well, I like, Jeremy, that you have a chapter on forgiveness, because that is an important principle for me as well. So how much does forgiveness play into the way that you're helping your clients change their story, alchemize their story from a different place to a new place?
Well, alchemizing too is transmuting from lead into gold, the old ancient alchemy. So it's those lead heavy thoughts of, no, you did this to me, so therefore I can never forgive you. And then the other part about self-awareness is a lot of times when you're doing forgiveness work, there's some anger towards yourself. So you have to do some forgiveness of yourself. So I love the Ho'oponopono prayer. I think it's a great, powerful thing. But also just saying, I love you and I forgive you to yourself and others. The limbic brain doesn't know any difference. It only knows that you're giving love and forgiveness. And so it'll feel that within the body. And if you were to just sit there on the couch while you're watching TV and saying, I love you and I forgive you over and over again internally, you'll feel the difference in your body. And so that was one of my first things where I started thinking about that. I said, wow, this feels really good. And so then I started saying, bring up the people I need to forgive. And then it was a mixture of myself in situations and then other people. And so then the 4 agreements comes in, where people do the best they can with what they have. And I probably got the wording off a little bit about that. But so you start looking in that and you started saying, well, yeah, this person really hurt me. And, there were some red flags that I saw early on that we were not necessarily compatible as friends, or maybe things had changed, or I needed to speak up and set boundaries and that kind of stuff. And so you can forgive yourself for that, and then also take it as a lesson to say, hey, next time something similar like this comes up, speak up and say, hey, when that happens, that hurts my feelings, or could we work on another way to communicate to where we grow into this? And so a lot of times what happens in forgiveness work is all these different lessons come up where you start becoming more self-aware. So, and then, forgiveness is a huge thing. And then there's some deeper, darker subjects that we could talk about where people have been harmed or hurt. And forgiveness isn't necessarily about saying it's acceptable for somebody to do what they've done to you. But it is saying I release that person and I release myself from this trauma or whatever I'm experiencing so I can live a full and rich life. Yeah. And so because the anger and hurt in our having real estate in our minds and our hearts is not helping us have that full and rich life. So
yeah, not to take it personally, I think it's what you were saying.
Yeah.
And I think Eleanor Roosevelt said it best too, is no amount of water can drown me unless I let it in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's a self-awareness, and you have to be able to distinguish, whoa, I'm being triggered. Wait, this is not the truth. I don't have to buy into this. This is,
Yeah, because our traumas will take us back to, they say that when people have experienced heavy traumas, that their emotional growth will actually get stopped at that age range that they were at. And so, let's say you had a major trauma at 16 or 17 years old. Your emotional growth, at least in that area, stuck at 16 until you start going back and doing some of the cognitive type of therapies that help you. Now, that could be through self-awareness, it could be through forgiveness work, there's cognitive behavioral therapies, there's a whole bunch of other modalities that will help you with that and what works for you. But as you start releasing all that stuff, then you start to look at the world differently and start to grow into the age range you're at emotionally. And so I'm sure we've all experienced it. I know I've experienced it in my lifetime where I was still operating in a 21-year-old mindset, even at 47, 48. And so you could be, and I'd laugh, I'd be like, I'm so responsible about a lot of other things and living this life. And then I would go, oh, well, that happened. And I was still stuck. And so that's okay to admit that. And then they have the energy start flowing emotionally and, growing up into that. So. Yeah.
Wow.
Tell us about some of your classes. You have some class, a master class coming up and a quantum study group. Can you entice me to attend, Jeremy?
Yeah. So I have on the 22nd of October, I have the High Vibe Business Masterclass that I'm doing with my friend Lisa Brewer. And that's going to be leading into a longer 6-month program where we're going to be teaching people, I'm going to be teaching people how to teach, how adults learn, how we have to tie things back to how they grow, how their own personal life. And then, different things about adult learners. And then she's going to be teaching about how to build the business for light workers. And then we're also I'm going to start teaching about the sales process. And, she's going to be talking about sales funnels. So that's on the 22nd. But I also, my big program that I'm really proud of right now is starting on the 23rd of October. So the next day. Because I didn't want to take a weekend off, and it starts at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's called Quantum Activation Healing Therapy, and so I am a quantum healer in a sense. And people have always asked me, "Well, what is that?" And so on a quantum level, on a super consciousness level, there is all these realms of possibilities. And so we start in this first level with healing yourself. In Reiki, they say heal thyself first. And the reason why they do that is because then all those self-doubts in there, all that stuff that says, oh, this can't happen, all that values, based on the measure about what you value yourself, by the way, is how you impact your world. And a lot of people, especially in the life mastery and, mind mastery and spirituality, they have a value issue. I work with a lot of healers that give a lot of energy out to other people, but don't necessarily learn how to receive. So we talk about on a quantum level how that affects you in your life and how to heal it. So that's going to be a 4-week course starting on the 23rd, and so we're really going to focus in
Nice.
on yeah, and I'm pretty excited about that one. My friend Terry Ann and I have put that together, and decided to collaborate on that project together. I'm just excited about putting it out there.
Cool.
So.
That is
That sounds,
cool.
I'm gonna have to check that out, Jackie.
Yeah.
Remind me to remind you to remind me to check that out.
It'll be fun.
Well, I know, Jeremy, in your book, you've got a list of some affirmations that you typically, I guess, use within these courses and teachings. You have some rules. I don't know if that's what you call them, rules of manifesting, or some things that you can work on manifesting. And then you've got some exercises too near the end of your book. Do you want to talk about any of those? Maybe give our listening audience some nuggets.
I will give this one. I think this is one of my favorite ones, and it's the one that everybody resists the most. It's called mirror work. Every client that works with me, one of the first sessions, I say, this next week, what I would like you to do, that's for 10 minutes every day. I'd like you to go look at yourself eye to eye, like literally just look into your eyes in a mirror. And I just want you to say you love yourself. And then I want you to come back in a week, and I want you to talk to me about that. Well, what happens in a week is they come back and I'm like, how did everything go? And they're like, oh, no, I did it one day and it was so awkward. I'm like, well, I knew that was going to happen. And so they're like, what do you mean you knew that was going to happen? Because nobody wants to face themselves, and you've never told yourself that you loved yourself ever in your life. And so now imagine what would happen if you started giving that love to you, and how you would attract your world around you. And so, I had the habit of always saying really nice, sweet things to people, my partners, saying how beautiful they were and all that other kind of stuff. Why wouldn't you do that for yourself? Well, I don't see myself as beautiful. And so then the old saying goes into, if you want to have love, you have to love yourself. So that is a very powerful exercise, and it's very simple. And when you get to when I first did it, my eyes would twitch because I was uncomfortable with it. But I just kept at it every single day until it finally broke something in me. Another one is to do eye work with another person. Your spouse, your friend. I do that in workshops a lot. I just did it a couple weeks ago in Melbourne. And it's very uncomfortable. But what ended up happening is when they finally got past all the nervousness and the uncomfortableness, they found a sense of peace within themselves. Affirmations are very powerful. And with that being said, you have to start working on saying no to the old programs and then bring in the new affirmations. So Catherine Ponder said this best. She said, when you try to do affirmations on top of the old programs, it's like building a new house on top of the old house. The old toilet is sitting right next to the new toilet, and it's just not going to work. Okay. However, the feelings of doubt, when something comes up and says, oh, well, that's not true, we're not going to have this successful life. You say, no, that's not true. We deserve the best of everything in our lives, and we want it divinely given in our divine plan. Whatever your language is. So what all we're doing is saying no to the old pattern, and then saying yes and bringing in the new. So what that does is it fires new transmitters in the brain, and then once the new pattern becomes habit, that's when the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain join, and it becomes a habit. So what you're doing is you're just breaking those old transmitters in the brain, and then bringing in the new ones.
Yeah.
So
very cool. Oh my goodness, my friends, we only have a couple of minutes left. Jeremy, thank you so much for showing up as you today and sharing with us Jeremy's World. There's another cool book, Jeremy's World.
That's a good one.
Thank you so much. Is there a last minute parting shot? Quickly, we only have about 2 minutes.
Love yourself and be good to yourself, and allow yourself to grow into your world. I mean, it's a process. Don't beat yourself up too much if you make mistakes. The mistakes are your opportunity to grow into new ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some great advice. Jackie, great guest. You always do good. We always do good. There, I'll say it that
I
way.
just meet awesome people. I've got that vibration now.
It's that vibration. I know. Yeah. I know.
Well, Jackie's going to be on my show here in the next month or two. So
nice. We'll have to put that in the newsletter. Yeah. I hope you come back, Jeremy, because I think there is a lot more that we could talk about.
Absolutely. I'd be honored.
That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did enjoy the show, my hope is that you would tell somebody about the show. We have many shows on our YouTube channel. Just look for Life Mastery Radio with Todd and Jackie, and they will pop up in all subjects, all kinds of cool guests. So many, I can't even remember them all. That's how many there is. That's about all we have time for. I hope you enjoyed the show. I already said that. Lastly, please, please, please make it a great day, because it is all about choice. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery Radio. Join Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery through stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Visit their website, www.lifemasteryradio.com. Join their mailing list and be notified about upcoming guests. That's lifemasteryradio.com.